All right.
I was waiting for Amber to respond because it sounded like something was updating.
Oh, no, it's good now.
Okay.
Okay,
All right,
good.
cool. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, hit it. They can't.
What now?
Why did the hockey playing dog have to go to the penalty box?
He got 2 minutes for roughing.
He did. You got one. You got a funny bone in you somewhere. Oh my
No,
goodness.
that still wasn't funny.
You laughed at it after. Welcome to Vet Med for Idiots by Idiots. I'm your host, Corey, the Common Idiot, with my co-host, Kent. I finally found something to laugh at, Morton. And we are going to be talking about self-care and self-calming. Actually, should I bring my voice down? Should I be like real into the microphone and just like an NPR podcast, just kind of really talk about, like, we're going to be talking about self-care and calming today, and I just want to use this monotonic voice to really draw you down. Or should I actually talk like my normal, loud, obnoxious jackass self?
Actually,
Sure.
begging you not to. That's like the opposite of calming.
That's just Corey in general is the opposite of calming.
So we have.
Oh, yeah, maybe we should introduce our guest who's already talking.
We have another repeat guest this season. My beautiful wife, Amber.
Don't hold that against her.
She is going to be talking to us about self-care and calming. Both like something that vets can use, but then also basically any trade or even outside of work, like in your own personal life, relationships, things along those lines. So for the catch up, what have you been up to?
That was a question for you, Amber. Everyone knows what I'm up to.
I'm sorry, Corey, you're gonna have to cut something out because he's like, it sounds very strange through my headphones with the noise canceling. Anyway,
Good.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, so I'm just living my best therapist life. It is.
Do you want to go let Banks into your room? Into the room? That's Banks.
He is
whining.
in the room. He is in the room.
What's he whining about?
What do you want? Don't stomp your feet at me. Get in your chair and lay down. Get in there and lay down.
She's actually currently talking to Corey, everyone not watching on video.
Lay down. Look. You know, you'd think he'd be used to this because so here, like, oh, hello.
This is a perfect segue.
Yeah. So honestly, the catch up is that I have been living my best remote therapist life. What you see here is what my clients see for an hour every week, dog included, because he firmly believes he is my coworker and that this is a shared your breath is a shared workspace. There's a chair right next to the desk where he often lays while I'm seeing clients, and the real irony of it is that the dog in this co-working relationship has the more comfortable chair. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
So on to the day's topic. We actually got a lot of really positive reviews from your last episode, which, like, for us to get positive reviews at all is kind of an accomplishment. But
and requires a guest, like the
good reviews. But multiple people said that, so one person in particular is a former police officer and messaged me personally and was like, I found a lot of what she had said applicable to my everyday life, not just veterinary medicine. So I wanted to let you know that. I think I had told you that both privately afterwards, but it's nice to hear that, you came on an episode and had a positive impact on quite a few people that you probably weren't expecting, because it is a a show geared towards, I don't want to say it's geared towards veterinary professionals because it's for idiots, right? Like, but you know, you had a positive impact on a lot of people that probably weren't anticipating it, which
Right.
is nice to hear. So we brought you back today.
Probably a
Um,
ton of Icelandic people got
yeah,
some mental health help.
yeah.
I was
Bjorn
about
and
to say, I've heard that you guys are popular in Iceland these days, and
We're huge.
it's a heavy load to carry, like bringing you to that space, but I'm able to do it. So
yes,
you're welcome.
we're huge in Iceland.
So
Put
sorry,
that
I
on a
didn't mean to
t-shirt.
throw you off, Kent.
That actually should be, if we ever do merch, we need a "We're huge in Iceland" shirt.
Yes.
Anyway, Corey, you're the one who knows the guest better, so I'll let you do the introductions.
I think I already did the introductions.
Yeah, that's fine. Moving
but
on.
So you have done that. You've also done social work in a MER since the last time you were on as well. I don't believe you had started that. So I mean, obviously you know how to handle people in crises.
Chances are your listeners probably don't know what a MER is.
I was gonna
That's
ask what
Oh,
it is, so
hey, I'm doing the thing that you always do.
yeah, we're doing this backwards today.
So,
um,
mental health emergency room. So if you fall and break your arm, you get in a car crash, have a concussion, things like that, you go to the emergency room, right? But in a lot of places there aren't that same thing for mental health. It's almost like, and I'm kind of doing a derivative of it, but it's like if you're in a mental health crisis, for the most part, uh in a lot of places it's like, okay, we'll just put you in a padded cell for an hour until, or a day until you calm down. But mental health is health. I mean, and so uh trying to help people in the middle of these crises, whether they're having, well, I'll let you take over because you know the actual terms. I don't.
yeah, so it definitely depends on the community where you seek out help if you're experiencing a mental health crisis. In many communities, it kind of comes down to the police or just going to like the regular emergency room. So the hospital that I was working for was lucky in that they did have like a dedicated mental health emergency space. And so that space would see a wide variety of clients, or patients, I should say, in that setting, ranging from um, people who were experiencing panic attacks, people who were experiencing such severe depression that they were considering taking their own lives, people who were engaging in different self-harm behaviors, sometimes people whose substance use was affecting their cognitive abilities. Um, and then sometimes people who were in a state where they're just like, fully detached from reality. So a very wide range and really needing to be able to meet people where they are within their crisis state and be able to kind of like figure out, okay, where do we go from there?
You say detached from reality like it's a bad thing.
These days, I don't think it really would. Maybe we could all use just a little bit of
Bit of
psychosis.
detachment, yeah. Like
Maybe not full on psychosis, but maybe just like a little bit of like dissociation.
yeah, like we can all have a little disassociation as a treat.
Yeah, exactly.
Have a disassociation day. It's on me.
Include that in your self-care routine if that's what you need to do.
There we go. And then
I
I
spend
do want to
2 hours every night disassociated from reality.
now I kind of do want to touch back a little bit on that first episode because any newcomers that may have not listened to that, I just kind of want to touch a little bit about, like, because some of the things that can weigh on someone in the vet world, even students, I think, would be, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, Kent, but I think students you know, when you're kind of getting the first taste of like compassion and fatigue, secondhand trauma, burnout, right? Like,
Well, so vet school and being a veterinarian are much different lives. Like, to be perfectly honest, like in vet school, I I am not a stateside student, and I do think sometimes stateside students have a little bit less psychosis than non-stateside students because we're constantly on the verge of failing out. Like if we fail more than one class, we don't really get to remediate it. Whereas like you can, depending on this program you go to, you can remediate a class in like your break and not stay with your class and everything. In my program, you actually get held back and two or more and you're out. So like every finals is like this panic attack, and then like you lose a bunch of friends at the end of the semester, and you don't lose them, like they're still there. They just go to a class below you. And to be honest, like some of those people are now like very, very good doctors. Like it doesn't, people fail. I mean, like it happens.
right.
But like then we get into our clinical year and we like I feel like we get a bad rep because we overcompensate because we constantly think everyone hates us. Then you go into vet med and you realize that there's two types of veterinarians. The ones that graduate and think they know everything, or the ones that were more like me that are constantly, you know, dealing with imposter syndrome. And I think that that's probably more the case. Yeah. Amber just gestured to herself. I assume therapists deal a lot with imposter syndrome as well. I think.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Stephen King actually, in his book on writing, talks a lot about when he was a younger writer going to like conventions as a writer and being around all these people he used to idolize and being like why the hell am I here? And like now he's probably one of the best known writers, but that's something that I try to remind myself is that everyone that I've ever looked up to has been in the situation that I'm always in, where you know, I sit there like, I mean, you know, Isaac Newton, like, well, Isaac Newton stole a bunch of information from, you know, other scientists, but you know, a bunch of scientists look up to Isaac Newton and like, you know, they sit there and they're like probably doing more advanced things than he could have ever comprehended, right? Physicists, at least.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway,
But
I forget where I was going with that.
well, I was just asking you like if compassion fatigue and secondhand trauma and burnout and things like that affect students too.
Burnout all the time. Like, I mean, after my clinical year, I remember like I took a month off before I started working, and I was just like, what the fuck? Like, I was just tired all the time. Compassion fatigue starts for me, it started in when I started working as a doctor, because that's when you're trying to be compassionate, right? Like,
Right.
I had, we do this on a Sunday. Friday, I had 2 euthanasias, and I was talking to my technician, and I was like, because, if these air in order, which I don't think they will, you're listening to me and Corey right after we both got over a head cold.
No, that's it. This is gonna be this is gonna be the sequence.
Yeah.
So this is also our 30th episode too, which is crazy. 30th sequence episode, not counting the minis or the specials.
Yeah. But like I remember talking to my tech because you know it was Friday. I talk about it like it was forever ago, and I was like, I feel like I'm like not doing my job. All the people were really appreciative. Like they, you know, they were not like, oh yeah, you sucked at telling me my dog was dying, but like I just, you know, like because I physically was still not feeling 100%, and so I'm trying to tell these people like your pet has this or that, and like I personally didn't feel like I did my job well, and again like what they told me was that I did a great job, but you know what are they going to say? You sucked at this.
So Amber, can you like just quickly define like compassion fatigue, secondhand trauma, and burnout? Like what because they're all kind of in the same realm, but they're also not the same thing.
Right. So there's kind of all fall within like the same umbrella. So compassion fatigue is kind of this you're you're giving so much compassion and empathy to others that you kind of like run out of it for yourself. Um
The well hath runneth dry, type thing.
yeah, yeah. Um and then secondary trauma, it's kind of like reliving trauma that you've experienced through like an intrusive thought, like something that you like you're not wanting to see that replay over and over in your head, but you do, and it kind of just creeps into your head and like uh really kind of brings back within your body those like feelings that you were feeling within that moment of that
Even though
traumatic experience.
20 years could have passed, and you're still you can remember the feeling, the way the room smelled, the way the way you were responding, the way everyone around you was, like it's frozen in time almost, right? Like a time capsule.
Mhm. Yeah, and then you have burnout, which is where you've kind of like reached the end of the line as far as compassion fatigue, and like you just don't have anything left to be able to give to your job. Where it's you're so have given so much of yourself while giving yourself nothing back, or not enough back, I guess. Maybe you're giving yourself something, but it's not enough. And it's gotten to the point where you're just like, I can't continue to do this work in
Right.
any meaningful way.
And then kind of with those two, secondary trauma, that's like feeling the effect through empathy, right?
So secondary trauma is kind of more like you're like reliving the experience. So for example, if I were the victim of a violent crime and then I'm um, on the stand in court testifying about um, my experience, um, this would be like secondary trauma because I'm like being re-traumatized based on the same
Okay.
event.
I always mix them
Um,
up. Secondhand trauma is getting the
Vicarious trauma.
vicarious trauma.
Um,
Okay.
makes it a little easier to remember. Vicarious trauma is when you're kind of like experiencing through empathy. So maybe from Kent's perspective, um, someone brings their dog in who has been hit by a car, and the pet's owner is kind of sharing with him the experience of like watching that happen and what they saw and what they felt and what they heard in that moment. And then Kent can't get that out of his head. Like that lives
Gotcha.
there rent free now.
I mean
Okay.
that's a very common occurrence, I think, for every veterinarian.
Right.
Hmm.
So I just wanted to do that level set. Because like I said, I know we go, and if you do want to go back and listen to that episode, it's in season 2, right, Kent? Or is it
Yeah,
season 1?
season 2. Um, Jesus
I always
Christ! Like
forget the
I would have to go back and look.
I always forget
Um,
the order.
someone I know has a podcast, and like if you ask them, like say a title of what they're doing, they can go through like their 200 plus episodes and give you the episode number. I can't do that.
I can't tell you last week's episode.
Last week is the episode where we were both dying.
Ah,
We both had man cold, so
yeah, it's a miracle we're both still here, honestly.
yes, for sure.
I actually suggested to Corey that you guys reschedule that one in the interest of both of your own well-being. And he was like, no, why would we do that?
We're
um,
we're attached to our guild.
yeah, well, and to be fair, like it, dear Lord, I can't even find it.
We had
Anyway,
yeah, it was a series of bad events. We rescheduled, or the original recording of it got lost. Like the guests recording didn't take, and then or only part of it went through. And then we rescheduled, and turned out we were double booked, and then we rescheduled again. So like the poor girl had been moved all over.
Yeah, and so we just tried to fight through it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Plus, I was hoping for some sympathy listens. Like, oh, we gotta listen to. We can't give this one a bad review. They were both sick. Which, to that chord, I'm still feeling a little bit. I still feel fine, but I know I sound off.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Or we get a review that's like, Corey and Kent both sound like they have tampons stuffed up their nose.
I would have stopped on the snot.
It might have made it better.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to go back and listen to that episode, please do. But like I wanted to kind of almost have a small glossary at the beginning of this episode for those things because we might touch back on those. But now I do want to kind of dive into a couple of the questions just for the level set. What is self-care? Because it sounds so simple. It sounds sorry, I ramble. It sounds so simple, but I think it's a lot deeper than what people think of as self-care. It's like I bought myself an ice cream. I did self-care. I'm done. I'm good.
Yeah, so kind of exactly what you said. So there's um, people I think tend to think self-care, okay, well, I washed my face and I brushed my teeth and I did my skincare. Cool. There's my self-care. But there's a lot more to it than that. Self-care is like this intentional um intentional practice of taking care of your physical, emotional, and mental self. Um, and there's a lot of different pieces that go into that. Like, yeah, it is taking care of like those physical needs, like skincare and brushing your teeth and et cetera, et cetera. But, it's also making sure that you are eating a nutritious diet, making sure you're staying hydrated, making sure that you're getting enough sleep because kind of like I harped on a little bit in my last episode, sleep is the like number one indicator of mental health. Like if someone comes to me and tells me like, "Oh, I'm not sleeping. I'm only getting like maybe 2 hours of sleep a night," I've got alarm bells going off. So, or conversely, if somebody comes to me and tells me like I'm sleeping like 18 hours a day and I can't get myself out of bed, I also have alarm bells going off. Goes both ways. Um, and also that like spiritual self and not necessarily religious, but that inner self, I suppose. Um, and also the social piece because something that humans need more than almost anything else in the world is a sense of connection. um, so those pieces are all just like so important to really maintaining that routine of self-care to be able to kind of fill yourself back up, um, or keep yourself full when you are engaged in activities that kind of drain that empathy and compassion and energy out of you.
Okay. Um, and do you think because like you've screamed from the rooftops that mental health is sadly not being taken seriously in this country or even in this world, to the effect that it should. We've come a long ways from where things were even 20 years ago. um like I think all three of us have either currently see a therapist or have used therapy in the past. And I think when I was in high school, I would have kept that the most guarded secret because I feel like at that point, and that was 20 years ago, only crazy people and weak people went to, or had to go to a therapy, had to go to a counselor. And I feel like that's crumbled a little bit, but I don't think we're where we need to be yet.
Our generation is definitely the most willing and able to engage in conversation about mental health. Well, I shouldn't say the most because Gen Z and Gen Alpha are coming behind us and they're loud about it too, and I'm proud of them for that. But um like we're the first generation to really be open and outspoken and advocates for our mental health. You definitely don't find that within um very few boomers, a little bit more of Gen X, but definitely not to the same level as millennials. I remember when I told my grandmother that I was going to be a therapist. This was just shortly after I had graduated with my master's. She asked me, like, well, what kind of therapist? What do you mean? And I'm like a mental health therapist, grandma, like talk therapy. Like, she's like, don't you need training to do that? Grandma, what do you think I went to grad school for?
Nope, they just let anyone be a therapist.
Yeah, whoever. They'll let anyone into that club. Sometimes I wonder how I got here. Like, there's been a meme that I've seen going around that's like, it's a therapist who's like in session with their client, and their client's like talking about some of their trauma, and the therapist is like, you should talk to someone about that. Oh, wait.
It's
And I've
the
definitely been in
meme
those
of
shoes.
I need an adult, and then I look around the
Yes.
room and I'm the adultiest adult in a room, but I need an adult who adults more.
I need an adultier adult.
Yeah.
So, like, I would say I would understand, like, you're an advocate for like mental health days, like just like if you have a sick day, kind of you always. I feel like there's a lot of times where you almost need to parallel physical health and mental health, because when that parallel is made, people realize like the urgency of mental health. Um, that's it. That is the question.
I mean, I've used this analogy with my own clients. I've had a few who have shared with me that they were upset about the fact that they had to seek assistance for their mental health in sort of like an urgent setting. Um, I've had one who was admitted and um, ended up very behind on bills because, you know, lost a lot of income for the time that they were admitted. Or I've had some that end up with sky high medical bills because their insurance didn't cover the care that they needed for their mental health. Um, so yeah, I've definitely had to use that analogy of like, would you be upset if you had to be admitted to the hospital for a terrible illness, like a terrible like physical illness, like a virus or something? No. Would you be upset about the fact that you had to pay an emergency room bill for a broken arm? No. Okay. Well, then why is your mental health less important? Like, why is that more important than you being alive and here to talk to me today?
Well, and we also don't really consider the physical effects of mental health on our own bodies. Like we take them as almost two separate things. But I mean, your brain can trick you into all sorts of things. Like that's what the placebo effect is, right?
Hmm.
Like, and that's why we have it. Like, because we want to make sure that people that are in drug trials aren't just like, oh, if you take this, you'll feel better, and then all of a sudden, like you feel better. Like your brain can literally make you think your disease isn't there anymore, because it is such a powerful thing. It controls everything, but we treat it like it's this special organ that doesn't get covered under our everyday health insurance here in America. In Iceland, which we're huge. Uh, they cover all sorts of shit with their socialized healthcare. They're fucking commies.
I'm so envious of them. So envious.
Anyway, but there was a question somewhere buried in there. Um,
I
um,
think if I can kind of pull it back out, I think it's physical and mental health absolutely like affect one another. So, I mean, um, if you are experiencing like clinical levels of depression and are unable to get yourself out of bed, then chances are you're probably not eating, you're probably not getting outside, getting fresh air, sunlight, probably not exercising, things like that that can contribute to your physical health. Um, or vice versa. Like, um, I mean, Corey has seen this in our own home because I suffer from a number of autoimmune conditions where occasionally things happen that I end up feeling just like I got hit by a truck for a day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, these are what I call flare days. Um, Usually it happens when I consume the evil gluten. Um, and yeah, it absolutely affects my mental health too, because I'm kind of stuck laying in bed for that day because I'm like, I can't move, I'm in pain. Um, and then I'm kind of, my anxiety gets the better of me where I'm like, oh, I should be up. I should be doing things for work. I should be doing things with my kids. I should be cleaning the house, whatever, whatever. All the like, I should, and have to kind of stop myself and say, like, no, your body is telling you what you need right now, and what you need is to just like rest.
Or your
So
husband comes and reminds you.
more often that one, yeah.
It's ironic that you're always about like give yourself grace, give yourself grace, give yourself grace until it's you. Then it's like nope, no time for grace.
Don't point out my flaws where other people can hear them. What if any of my clients listen to this? No, I did not say that. Quiet.
So, and I, because yeah, I can definitely understand that. I know that people have literally died of like heart attacks and aneurysms from stress too. And I mean, like stress can be a byproduct of a myriad of mental health issues too, including anxiety from the workplace, right?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Quick
You can
aside, Amber,
definitely.
if one of your clients heard that, they would find you more relatable and it would probably help them more than you think. Anyway, end of story.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
appreciate that. I definitely preach to my clients, not preach, share with my clients that like I'm a therapist, but I'm also a human.
Yeah.
Um, and so like they pretty much all, any of them who has been with me for any amount of time knows that like um I'm gonna be sitting here in probably leggings and a sweatshirt. My dog is going to be in the room. You're probably going to hear him bark at some point. Uh, that, you know, sometimes things come up and I need to reschedule a session to go pick up a errant child, you know, like they're all aware. They know.
But that's
And I
that
think they
that
appreciate that.
that does add to the relatability though. I mean, like and I think maybe that's why going another aside, I think that's why therapy and counseling has changed so long because it always before it always was like you went to this gloomy building, you went into this sterile office, you laid on this couch and someone almost talked down to you, you know, the cliche of like, you know, tell me about the first time you remember your childhood, and then they'd be writing this down. It felt judgmental and like a power shift, like they were over you. Where
It also
what
kind of
you do
depends on
isn't
which,
equal.
sorry.
No, no, no. You're
Um,
fine.
It also kind of depends on which profession you're seeing for therapy because our approaches can be a little bit different. Like what you were describing, I would kind of probably expect to hear more from a psychologist. Um,
That's fair.
or I'm a social worker. I really tend to ask a lot of questions about like um, the environment. What's going on in your relationships? What's going on? Like, do you have friends? Like, what sort of levels of stress are you feeling within your job, your family? What trauma do you carry with you, whether that's like from childhood or more recent? And you know, I tend to kind of focus more on that sort of thing. My particular flavor of therapy tends to be very like relational, where I sort of it's part of what I love about telehealth. Um, it's almost like I guess just more like your therapist meeting you as like a human versus being like kind of detached, like therapists have historically been.
Yeah, that's a good way of explaining it. Um, one more question, just kind of in talking about this in general, and then I do want to kind of go into the reason that everyone's listening is the self-care techniques and the calming techniques. Um, but how do you know that it's something bad? Like maybe you should go to a MER, you should go to a therapist or a counselor or a psychologist, or versus it just being like a series of bad luck, like you have a few nights of bad sleep because just restlessness, or you slept for 16 hours but there's extenuating circumstances, you worked you know uh 10 doubles straight before your day off type thing. Or you're really depressed right now, you feel depressed, et cetera, et cetera. Like how do you know that it's something that's gonna pass as soon as it, or as fast as it came on, versus like, okay, it's red flags are raising and maybe I should do something.
So my kind of litmus test for whether it's time to kind of seek intervention, and let me back up just a second. So anyone can go and get therapy. Like there's not one human on the planet who is so perfectly well adjusted that they can't benefit from therapy. Like deep-seated belief here. Um, so I mean, there's never a bad time to seek out, like, yeah, therapy might not be a terrible idea. Um, but when kind of looking at like when it's time to kind of look at that maybe next step up of care. So whether that's like, okay, maybe I need to like, maybe it's starting with like talking to my primary care about getting on some medication for depression and anxiety, or maybe seeing a psychiatrist or a psychiatric provider to kind of manage some medications, or maybe it's um, my or someone else's well-being is at stake and it's time to look for some more urgent or emergent care for mental health. Um, and so my um, barometer for this is sort of like, is some major pattern within your life as far as your daily functioning changing? So are you like not sleeping? Kind of like I mentioned earlier, where like if you're only sleeping like 2 hours a night, and I would look at this one in particular as kind of like a pattern. If it's just been like you've had a really, really stressful week and it seems like uh everything is kind of crashing down and you have a few nights of rough sleep, but then things kind of get resolved a little bit and you're sleeping okay again. That's maybe not so much uh of an issue. But if this is like going for, like, okay, the stress levels have come down, but I'm still not sleeping. Um, or if there's like not a major stressor and that sleep can like just goes.
Hmm.
And then vice versa with like sleeping too much, like you're sleeping the whole day away and not getting up and going to work or school or whatever. Um,
So
Same
you
thing for
gotta
changes.
look at it as the whole picture.
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
just ran or just did an Ironman the day before and you sleep for 18 hours the next day, understandable.
sure, sure. But if that's going for like, you know, it's been a week that I've like not been able to get out of bed and go to work. Yeah, that's a
Mhm.
problem. Um, Same with like change in appetite. Whether it's I'm like not eating, like I can't get out of bed to go make food, or perhaps overeating, like I'm just like binging junk food nonstop. Um, or maybe you are typically like a meal planner and like cook a lot of your meals, and now all of a sudden, okay, I can't do that. That's too much work. And so I'm just like housing frozen pizzas. Um, and so And then kind of along with those, like losing your like daily functioning sort of stuff, not going to work, not going to school, not showering, not brushing your teeth, not doing your laundry, not doing your dishes, things like those, like that we typically would expect to be like, yeah, I check these boxes like every day or whatever. Once those are starting to go, I'm asking some questions. Um,
What
in
about
addition to that,
enjoyment or losing enjoyment in things that you historically like to do?
oh yeah, absolutely. hmm Um, I would also add to that like isolation. Like you're not talking to your family members, you're not talking to your friends that you normally would reach out to on a regular basis. Um, being more irritable than what you usually would be. Um, changes in like substance abuse patterns, like someone who typically only has like maybe a glass of wine on a weekend or something is all of a sudden downing a bottle a night. Um, changes in like ability to concentrate. Um, this might be a little bit more difficult barometer for someone like me who has ADHD, and I'm lucky if I can concentrate on anything. But um, yeah, um, major increases in anxiety can be kind of a warning sign. Intrusive thoughts beyond baseline, because you can have some kind of intrusive thoughts at baseline.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, I have tons and tons of. Usually, it's like run your hand along this brick wall or funnel the water into the little hole at the top of the sink. Those intrusive
it's not
thoughts.
necessarily an intrusive thought, though. Where it becomes intrusive is when it's something that, like, you kind of think to yourself, like, that was rude.
Mm.
Um, like, I wouldn't be bothered necessarily by like running my hand along the wall or, but if it's something like, um, I'm holding my favorite coffee mug and I'm like, I should just like smash this into the wall.
Oh, okay.
Or yeah. Or uh what if I just like what if I tripped and fell down the stairs? Or the classic that there's been like songs written, like what if I just like yank the steering wheel while I'm driving down the freeway? The things that say like cross your mind and you're like, oh, that's rude. I don't really want to think about that. Thank you. Please leave. Um, but they get kind of like out of control where like this is happening more often than not and it becomes difficult to tell them to be quiet. um in addition to that, I would also say any level of thoughts of harming oneself, thoughts of harming anyone else, or seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling um things that other people cannot.
Smelling?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Huh.
Really?
We tend to think what we hear most often, like audio or visual hallucinations. Like so like hearing voices, or like seeing things that aren't really there. Those are the ones we hear about the most often, but you can definitely have hallucinations of the other senses as well.
Hmm.
Less common than they kind of tend to go along with like the audio and video, but they do exist, yeah.
So are
So,
like
like
all
feeling something brushing your leg or something.
hmm
are all the mediums from ancient history or the oracles from Greek mythology just people who lack self care?
Undiagnosed, undiagnosed mental health issues.
Who knows?
All right, so let's get to the meat and potatoes. What would be a good self-care regimen? And I recognize that this is like self-care needs to be tailored to the person, right? Um,
hmm
going to a spa sounds like a fresh day of hell for me, where I think you'd absolutely love 8 hours away from everything, and you know. Um, so can you kind of give like a regiment of what good self-care would be?
Well, I'll give you kind of a range here because, like you said, this is different for every person. Um, And so there's a lot of things that are self-care that people have kind of built into their day-to-day experience that they don't even necessarily realize is self-care. So, um, some that like any person could benefit from, and really probably should uh, follow with, are some of the like basic like physical self-care. So like regular exercise, whatever that looks like for a person, like maybe exercise to one person looks like, oh, I run 13 miles a day. That sounds like my personal level of hell. Um,
I was gonna say that person
or
hates themselves.
I don't even want to drive 13 miles.
or maybe that's, chair exercises. Like there's a whole spectrum there, whatever that
Right.
looks like for each person. Um, eating nutritious meals, getting, the amount of nutrition that they need for their body and their activities, preferably in ways that incorporate some fruits and vegetables and are meeting, what their body needs. Um, staying hydrated, drinking a sufficient amount of water, um, getting an appropriate amount of sleep. Amen. There you go. Um, getting an appropriate amount of sleep. Um, practicing sleep hygiene, which I think I talked about a little bit in my last
Yeah.
episode, where, like having that like routine of steps before you go to bed. So like, okay, it's, an hour before I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to kind of turn the lights down. I'm going to do my skincare, brush my teeth, uh, fill up my cup of water for next to the bed and read
Reader
for 20
romantically.
minutes.
You
Hey,
read some awesome stuff though.
I do. I do. That is my like um absolutely unbudgeable piece of self-care. I absolutely read
Mhm.
for at least 20 minutes before I go to sleep every single night. I think I'm approaching my 2-year mark of doing that. Um, yeah. So those are kind of like the physical ones. And you can also, um add in more to that. Like maybe you're a person who likes to go and get a massage, or maybe you are a person who likes to meet up with some friends and uh, shoot hoops, or um, play pickleball, because I guess that's a thing people do now. Um,
It
I
is
have
a
no
thing
idea.
people do now.
I hear it's a lot of fun, but I mean, I don't know if it would be a lot of fun for me, but if somebody else
We
likes it,
just
it's
had
cool
a
for them.
pickleball
You
tournament
have
at work, actually. Not like that I played in. It was sponsored by my place of employment.
it looks like a lot of fun for something where you have to give up all of your dignity to play.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I
I haven't
hear
played.
I hear it's a good time. I don't know.
That
Um,
also assumes I have dignity. So
another piece of my self-care regimen that I really love is yoga. I like I'm very open about the fact that I have ADHD. So kind of like sitting still and meditating is not it for me. Um, but I can absolutely do some deep breathing and meditation in my yoga practice. Um, I'm not going to say I'm good at it, which is why I only do like my Apple Fitness video yoga at home and not going to like a yoga studio because, you know, I don't, I'm terrible at it. Uh, but it's
yeah.
an
You
important
enjoy
piece
it.
to my
Wait.
self-care
No,
piece.
no, no. Back that up. So I took a yoga class in college because you need a phys ed credit, and my instructor was always like, everyone has their own limits to how far their body can stretch. Like, no negative self-talk on yoga here. Like, it's a very personal thing, and you can definitely go to a yoga studio, and also you're super flexible because of the autoimmune
Ehlers-Danlos.
disorders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ehlers-Danlos. Yeah.
So I tried to stretch out my legs the other day, and I was like, my yoga instructor from 2003 would be very disappointed in how lack of flexibility I have.
Plus, Kent is a firm believer in no negative self-talk, unless
Unless it's
it's
myself.
him talking about him.
Wow, who does that sound like? Um,
Don't know.
yeah, so I mean, it's limitless, really. Like there's, so many different ways to incorporate self-care in a physical way. And then there's like emotional self-care. So maybe this is like journaling. Um, it's kind of like the big one. Meditation, like I was kind of talking about. Um, Reading is like a big piece of like mental self-care for me because it kind of like gives me like, okay, I'm going to turn off the parts of my brain that like actually do like work and like maintaining a schedule for a very busy family and all of that stuff, to like allow my brain to like relax to sleep. um so that can be a big one. um Breathing exercises, incorporating those into kind of like your day-to-day uh routine. um I lost my train of thought, sorry, there's the ADHD. Good grief. um the social piece of self-care. um Humans are wired for connection. Like we that connection piece is so incredibly important. I can't tell you how often I talk with clients in like any number of settings, that when they tell me they're depressed and I start to ask about like, okay, well, tell me about like your what's your family life like tell me about your like friendships outside of the home. How often I hear, well, I don't really have any friends. And I'm like, okay, there it is. um
Can I pause you there just for a second? Like, can socialization, does it have to be like buddies going out for a night of shooting hoops or anything like that? Or like, is socialization okay even if it's like a digital, like a group of friends, because they're all one lives in California, one lives in Michigan, one lives in New York. They're all over the map, but they meet up at certain times to play video games online.
I would say that in person is definitely the biggest like bang for your buck.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I would say that connection in a virtual way also counts. Um, yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that. I mean, like um, my own best friend and I see each other in person like a handful of times a year, even though we only live a little over half an hour apart. Um, but we talk across multiple apps every single day. Like if I went 24 hours without hearing from her, I would be calling the CIA. Like, where find her now. Um, so yeah, that absolutely counts. Just like I say, like the biggest bang for your buck is more of a like in person or even like
Right.
FaceTime. Um,
That fills up the well faster.
mhm, absolutely.
Or recording a
Um,
podcast with your friend on a Sunday.
Every Sunday.
um, Kind of like a environmental piece of like maintaining the environment you live in. So avoiding risky situations. Corey can share a piece of like my self-care. There's a lot of people who look at me and when I say like cleaning is self-care for me, a lot of people look at me like, what? No, why? And I'm like, no, but you don't understand. Like, if my house is like cluttered and messy and my space is like, there's a lot of like stuff going on, that's incredibly distracting for me. Which then kind of like pulls everything else down with it. So, like, yeah, if our house is a mess and crazy and cluttered, like that gets really overwhelming for me.
And
And,
it's
some
tough.
people are like that and some aren't.
And it's really tough too when you have a set of almost 3-year-old twins.
Hmm.
They will be
Jesus.
3 after the time this comes out.
Yeah. Human hurricanes. Human hurricanes through my house all the time.
The listening audience should be very familiar with them. They like
Oh,
to
yeah.
Yes.
make guest appearances every now and again.
I swear I do my best. I
Oh
swear I
no,
do.
it's
But when
I
it's two against one, trying to
yeah,
contain them, and they are
and
becoming much more industrious in their means of getting access to daddy.
Yes, I'm sure.
It's a struggle. It's a real
and
struggle.
Miles weighs about as much as you anyway.
Yeah, yeah. It's like trying to contain a bowling ball that's like self-propelled.
That's a good analogy for that little linebacker. Um,
My brother always said going from like 2 kids to 3 kids, which you guys have, I think it's in the 70s now, amounts of children.
73, yes, actually,
Yes,
yeah, 73.
73 children. It's like going from man coverage to zone, and it just gets a lot more difficult the more like children they are, the more they
Mhm.
outnumber the parents. I don't know. I just have dogs.
It's right though. That's yeah.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
self-care, emotional, physical, you're taking care of all these things. Because I think a lot of times when people think self-care, they just think, okay, let's go on a shopping spree. And that
Mhm.
can be
And
a piece of it if that's something
oh,
you enjoy,
absolutely.
right?
Mhm.
But if you're somebody who worries about like nickels and dimes, that actually might be uh like anti-helpful, right?
In which
Like
you see how Corey and I stress each other out.
I wasn't actually talking about us, but I was saying in general, like it's kind of like a find your zone type.
Did I just
type
become a
Yeah.
marriage counselor?
No, you're not licensed. That's the only reason.
According to Amber's grandmother, I don't need to be.
Um,
she
so
Shout
she
out to
sets the
Grandma. I'm gonna have to play this
standards.
episode for her.
She sets the standards for marriage counseling in the country, apparently.
Get the licensing exam. Just prove to my grandma that you're qualified.
Okay, that's it.
There it is.
so how about calming techniques? What are because I mean, obviously, trying to keep your well filled, um, in a very stressful work environment, or even for people who are about to enter very stressful environments. Because I do like to try to keep the vet students in mind. What are some calming exercises that people can do? Like, because I mean, like they're Kent, I know for a fact you've had some very absolutely hellish, just shit-tastic days that just grate on you. What are some things that you can do in that moment to either get yourself out of that slump so you can continue on, or even like because I knew a woman whose son had committed suicide. It had been like 20 years, but she still thought about him, and she said that she would feel him, like feel that grief randomly coming on, but then she could somehow compartmentalize and like, okay, I can't deal with it right now, but I guess I'm going to compartmentalize it. And tonight at 8 o'clock, I am just going to sit down on my couch and I'm going to lose my shit. Um, but I'll wait. I'll wait till that's done, type thing. So, what are some of those calming techniques, and like how did she do something like that?
So what we've been talking about up to this point is kind of more what we think of as like proactive
Right.
self-care. So like kind of the keeping the well filled up as we go. Like you're driving the car and you realize you're headed out on a long journey and you've got like half a tank, stopping to fill up the tank on your way out of town versus like waiting for it to be on E and praying you make it to a gas station.
Right, but
Um,
I mean,
what
using
we're
analogy though, like yeah, even if your car is in perfectly maintained condition, sometimes someone blows through a stop sign and T-bones you, or you get a flat tire, something
Yeah.
derails your
So
plans.
mhm. And so these will be kind of more the like reactive self-care strategies. Like um
More
yeah,
band-aid than
the
planned
tire has
proactive.
gone flat and here's what we do to get ourselves back on course. Um so what you want to do here is like addressing your immediate needs in response to stress. Um and so these are going to be kind of more like short term like band-aid it sort of strategies. So, um, And again, this is kind of a very short list in comparison to all the different options out there. Um, because there's any number of strategies you can use depending on the situation and what you have available. So going for a walk if you can, like just even getting outside and circling the block for some fresh air and some sunshine. Um, Using grounding techniques to kind of bring yourself like back to
So
the moment.
what is a
One
grounding
that
technique? Like
so
what is
it's
that just in general? And then
yeah,
what are some?
so it's something that you do to kind of like bring your mind back to like the reality of the situation. This is one that I really like for anxiety. Um, if you're kind of like anxious and spiraling about whatever, to kind of bring yourself back into okay, here's where I am. This is what's actually going on. Um, and like kind of putting yourself like back into the moment. Um, One that is very popular, that a lot of people use, and you can really do it from like uh, with some adaptation. You can do this from like young children all the way up to older adults. Um, you just might kind of like uh, simplify it a little bit for little ones. Is like a five senses sort of grounding. So it's like naming uh, five things you can see, four things you can hear, three things you can feel, two things you can smell, one thing you can touch. Um, and you really, this is most effective if you can kind of like pair it with some uh, nice deep breathing. Um, and of course, you go through it a little more slowly than what I have said.
Right.
Um, One that I've been using a lot with my clients lately that's a little bit more expedient, works a little bit quicker, and you don't need like any resources. You can do just like literally wherever you are. Um, is kind of crossing your arms over and like giving yourself a little bit of a hug, and then sort of like a squeezing massage all the way down your arms. A nice little squeeze on your hands when you got to the bottom of your hands, and then squeezing all the way back up along your arms to get to your shoulders. And you can do this nice and
Unless
slow.
you only have one
Again,
arm. If you only have one arm, you cannot do this.
yes, folks with limb differences might struggle with this particular exercise. Um, Yeah. So, and you can do this like nice and slowly. Again, best if paired with some like nice deep breaths. Um, but that like crossover and repetitive massaging motion really does something to kind of uh, settle the nervous system. Um, my particular favorite lately, with it being wintertime, as of the time we're recording this, um, is and I wish I could remember where I had learned this from so that I could give them credit. Uh, what I call like hot cocoa breaths.
I was hoping
So
you would demonstrate that one.
I love this one. Yeah. So kind of imagining yourself like you've been outside, it's a chilly winter day. You're coming back in and there's a nice, like steaming, rich hot cup of hot cocoa waiting for you.
Hold on, Kent and I are
And
gonna do it with you.
perfect. I love it.
All right.
So imagine you're taking that nice warm cup of hot cocoa in your hands and feeling that warmth, and then taking a deep breath in, like you're smelling the hot chocolate and kind of like imagining that. So, like a nice deep breath in, and then blowing out through your mouth, but so slowly and gently as to not move any of the marshmallows in the cup.
I just want to drink my hot cocoa.
Um, that's a good one. Um, so you also can uh using like ice or an ice pack, or even like uh maybe like a frozen orange is actually a really good one. Um, but even just like ice, I personally like an ice pack so it doesn't get all like melty and messy. Because the temperature change can really help to like calm your nervous system and like get your brain back online. Um,
You can even use like like drinking cold water for that, right?
you can, yeah, absolutely. Um, it also works like vice versa, uh, like a hot shower can also
Hmm.
work. Um, and then there's also things like listening to some music you enjoy that like um, can help kind of feel those feelings, or uh, venting to a friend or a coworker, because honestly, sometimes our brains just need to let it out. Um, and just like talking it out and putting it out there is a good step towards being able to regulate those emotions. So those are my big like reactive strategies, the ones I tend to recommend the most.
And obviously, like you said, like uh this is the comparison, like the tire popped on the car, you're putting a patch on it, you put the donut on, that's to get you down the road until you can get
Mhm.
a new tire to replace it.
Yeah, absolutely. Always, you don't want to wait for the car to be on fire to go to the mechanic.
Right. That's a really good analogy, actually.
Again, credit to wherever I saw this online. I can't remember. I'm sorry.
Hey,
So
you do more looking than us when it comes to this specific niche. So
yeah, so I think we've kind of come to the end of the episode, but I think we have two more questions for Amber.
okay.
One, being that we're recording this on Super Bowl Sunday, Travis Kelce recently made some comments about being honored that Donald Trump would be present at the Super Bowl. Travis Kelce, also known as Mr. Taylor Swift. Does this make you root for the Eagles?
It
Or
does
are you
not.
still rooting for Team Swifty?
I am still rooting for Team Swifty. I actually had my um number 87 but with like the name Swift t-shirt on earlier that I will definitely be putting back on for the evening. Because if Taylor Swift has zero fans, then I am dead. Um, so yeah, definitely still rooting for Mr. Swift. And also kind of just like a little bit of an awareness that there was probably some media training at play there. And like,
Yeah, and
if you want
personally,
to be able to play in the
he
Super Bowl, you probably need to be like as apolitical as you possibly can.
he my personal thoughts on the comments are that they're overblown, because really his comment was it's an honor to play in front of the president no matter who it is. Like which I felt was in and of itself distancing himself from Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Um, but
Agreed.
I just was seeing if maybe you would go and root for the birds after that.
I
Um,
see, for me, I
I
don't
can't do
care.
it.
I don't care who wins. I just hope both teams have a miserable time.
yes, that's me too.
I'm actually Team Meteor.
I've been Team Meteor for a while. Like we've had a good run. The dinosaurs
Let's let
should
them
be,
have another shot.
yeah, let them go back to have another shot at it all. Anyway, our closing question for the season is: what is your favorite Angela Bassett movie and why? I want also, being that these will be sequential, Beth did message me privately to say that How Stella Got Her Groove Back gets a good 3 out of 5, three and a half
Three,
out of
three and
5.
a half out of 5. Yes.
Yes, so she did go back and watch that. That is now her favorite Angela Bassett movie, which seems like a low grade for a favorite. Anyway.
So Corey can attest to the fact that I am not a TV movie person. My particular flavor of ADHD, like I can sit and read a book for hours on end, but it is like almost physically painful for me to actually sit still and watch a movie. Um, so that being said, um, my default answer, because I also am terrible at recognizing and recalling movies, stars, actors, actresses, whatever. Notoriously bad. It drives Corey a little bit crazy, I think. So I definitely had to Google like things that she had been in. My default easy answer is anything to do with the Marvel Cinematic Universe because those are like some of the very few movies that I will actually like tolerate sitting still to watch. Um, but it has to be like a right set of circumstances. This is definitely not a like any day. But I also discovered in my Googling that she was the voice of Nana in a like film adaptation of Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats. And now I actually want to watch that, and I'm going to say preemptively that one's probably my favorite because I love that book.
Which movie is that? I actually don't even think I've heard of that. Anyway, yes, Angela Bassett
or
was
like a series or what it is.
Oh, okay. Angela Bassett was in both Black Panthers, so yeah.
Yeah, she was the Queen of Wakanda.
Yeah, Queen of Wakanda.
Black Panther's mom.
So that's my default answer
That
as
is an excellent answer.
as a Marvel girly.
Sounds good.
Excellent,
All right.
answer.
So any this is your soapbox moment. So any shout outs you want to do, any socials you want to plug, anything along those lines you want to talk about, or even resources for clients? And I know you'll probably send me a list that I can add to show notes, but
yeah, I can absolutely send some resources. Definitely some good resources for connecting with mental health professionals in your area. There's a whole wealth of spaces that you can search online. And it also, like in this era of telehealth, has become much easier to be able to find um, a provider who aligns with your needs because we're just not quite as limited by uh, location and
Space,
proximity
yeah.
as what we used to be.
right.
That is part of what I love about being exclusively on telehealth because I'm able to see a lot of clients who might not otherwise be able to get those services. I see a lot of, uh, I see a few teenagers like after school uh, who, you know, their parents might not prioritize bringing them to an office to see me on a weekly basis. I also have a number of um, moms on my caseload who might not otherwise have childcare to be able to come to an appointment every week. So definitely resources for finding um, those, you know, those pieces. I also think there's just a wealth of podcasts out there um, that give amazing mental health tips and ideas and strategies if you are in a space where you're like, I don't know that I necessarily need to like go see a therapist on a regular basis, but maybe I just need like some tips and tricks. Like just find the one that you enjoy.
What are some of the ones you'd recommend?
My personal favorites are We Can Do Hard Things with Glennon Doyle, Abby Wambach, and then Glennon's sister Amanda. Um, that one's like a personal favorite of mine. I actually tell my own therapist that it's like my mini therapy session in between my sessions with her. 10% Happier is another one that I really like. They're shorter episodes and like kind of more digestible. Um, to kind of manage mental health on like a day-to-day basis. Um, there's plenty of others, but those are the two that kind of like, oh, anything that Brene Brown does is gold. Um, she's the social worker I'd like to be when I grow up. For any parents, my personal favorite is Good Inside with Dr. Becky Kennedy. She does a lot of good talk about like balancing um, self-care and parenting. that one's been my like obsession a little bit lately. Navigating like with my own kids. Yeah, those are kind of my favorites.
And one other thing I wanted to add to the new thing that you've been the new organization that you're working with for neonatal and postnatal.
Postpartum Support International.
Yeah, you want to plug that a little bit because that's an awesome thing. Has nothing to do with self-care, but I think it's still important.
Well, I think
but everything to
postpartum
do with mental
depression
health,
is,
though.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, everything to do with mental health in the perinatal space. So,
Okay.
yeah, they have tons of resources for moms, dads, adopted families, pregnant individuals, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, anyone within that perinatal space. So pregnancy all the way through postpartum, and even resources for trying to conceive, infertility support, things of that nature. They have the website is I think it's postpartum.org, if I'm remembering correctly. They have support groups that meet virtually for basically any situation you can think of within the perinatal space, whether that's pregnancy, traumatic birth, postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, um, uh, parenting across different races and ethnicities, parenting with uh, special needs, uh, termination, pregnancy loss, infant loss. There's also resources and support groups for fathers as well. Um, and then they also have peer supports and coordinators to help connect with local resources for those situations. I'm actually a volunteer coordinator for pregnancy and infant loss because I'm trained in that area. So, yeah, tons of resources through them for anyone who is experiencing anything that affects their mental health within the perinatal period.
All right. Beautiful. Thank you again for being on here. I'm be willing to bet any amount of money that at least one listener will really take something away from this, and that's ultimately what our show has always been about anyway. And it sometimes it's more just dick and fart jokes, but
Well,
but
I'd
like
also be remiss not to kind of plug the like 988 crisis line, for anyone who
yeah,
is experiencing kind of like I talked about with, those red flag sort of situations. Anyone who is experiencing thoughts of hurting themselves, thoughts of hurting someone else, seeing or hearing things that aren't really there. Reach out to those crisis lines. You can text or call 988. There's resources available online. Worst case, call 911. Go to your emergency room. Like, seek those services because the world needs you to stay and to be here for another day. And if anyone has any questions about any of the things that I've talked about, I mean, you can always reach out to Kent or Corey to put you in connection with me, and I'm happy to help point you in the right direction.
Absolutely.
All right. So again, thank you so much for being a part of this. To anyone listening, just make sure that you're keeping your head on straight and hope that the best things in life are coming for you. This is Corey, the common idiot, for Amber, what did we go with? Brain witch idiot?
Something like that.
And Kent, the doctor idiot, saying so long and have the day you deserve. And I am feeling better, Kent. So bye.